ASEAN
Ini kan maksudnya
and helping
kalau
them in deploying again
udah.
more renewable energy, in transitioning towards more cleaner bankable environment or a bankable structure for us as developers to come and risk our equity, for us as developers to invite banks to put and leverage
And it was a compelling project for you, Marissa.
Yeah, we did it.
They do. We work a lot with them, of course. They help us in structuring the projects. They help us in deploying, of course, the fund for the project. So it is not easy, certainly. But once you get the first projects across the line, I think it becomes much easier.
Okay.
Because all the stakeholders get to learn how we can structure a project that tick all the boxes, make everyone have the confidence that this is the right investment, and this is, of course, the right investment for a good cause, but the right investment from legislation perspective, from economical perspective, and so on.
Okay, I want to come back to
Sure.
some of these themes, but I want to talk now to Ahmed Mazari, the president of Microsoft Asia. Obviously, Microsoft doesn't really need an introduction. Everybody knows what Microsoft does. Tell us about the work that you're doing in ASEAN, in Indonesia, in terms of digital transformation, which is the other part of this equation, the move to net zero, but also the move to a digital economy. Microsoft must be front and center of that.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you very much for the great introduction. Look, I'm trying to perhaps connect dots, and that may be
that's helpful.
Useful for us to do. You accurately pointed out to 180 coal-fired plants here, but equally, there's 120 million hectares of agricultural land here, which has the possibility to generate 28 billion tons of carbon credit. It's back to your point. Now, that would be humanly impossible to map. And so we're actually working with a startup here called Jejak using AI. And they've just started the journey. So they've absorbed about 14.5 million tons of carbon already. They've planted, I think, that I don't get accused of sharing the wrong data.
Marissa will tell you off.
About 10 million trees are in the queue as well. So what we're trying to drive is essentially enable enterprises, micro enterprises, to the point that was made earlier, in helping them have access to better data, have access to more agile data, and be able to do stuff that was, like I said, humanly impossible. How do you map 120 million hectares of agricultural land in the country? The other project that we're doing is in the space of water. And why am I talking about water? You know,
Why are you talking about water?
We're talking about water because as a company, we consume a lot of fresh water. Yes. This morning, there was an article in the FT about the fact that semiconductors manufacturers are struggling because of the hottest time in our planet. And the reservoirs in Taiwan are down to levels of 11%. What we're trying to do, so we've got two pledges here. First is, as a company, we have pledged to be water neutral, i.e. we will replenish as much clean water as we consume by 2030. Secondly, we're working with companies in ASEAN and Indonesia to essentially track fresh water and to enable their access to a wider population. So I tried to move away from technology and kind of give you examples of GPUs and CPUs, but rather focus on what we think is making progress in society.
Well, I think what is so interesting about what you said, having said Microsoft needs no introduction, of course, you don't think, I certainly as a consumer don't think of Microsoft as a data company, and you do actually knit the panel together, because as Marissa was saying, it's difficult for her to finance projects unless she has reliable data. You can supply data to Sonaso's clients, the micro businesses that need great data as well. But I want to develop some of the themes that have emerged from all of your remarks. And I want to return to Patrice, because you said something, not in passing, but you said something in your introduction which I found really interesting, which we haven't really talked about at the various events I've been to here, which is about creating high added value jobs. We talk, to a certain extent, some of these themes are quite abstract, you know, the digital economy, sustainable investment. But what we also mean are new jobs for millions of people in ASEAN, but they're high-skilled jobs. What do you think the challenge is to train people and give people the opportunity to work in these new industries?
Well, it really depends on countries we speak. Let's take two extreme examples to illustrate or to try to answer your question. On one hand, you have, I would say, countries like the US, Europe, where we are clearly lacking engineers. And this is becoming a critical resource, if I may say, if we are not able in these countries to produce, quote unquote, more engineers. We will still need, I would say, low added value jobs, if I may say, quote unquote, but clearly the high added value ones, technicians, engineers, researchers, we face a huge, I would say, lack of these kind of resources as of today. At the other extreme, let's take India. India produces, again, quote unquote, between 1 million to 1.5 million engineers per year. It's potentially the largest reservoir in terms of engineers, which is, I would say, able to serve Indian needs or Indian companies, but as well many other tech companies in the world. That's why, by the way, either we rely on India in terms of engineering centers, or we, quote unquote, import, sorry to say so, talents from India to other countries. Now we need to rebalance things. So we need in each and every country to make sure that we produce enough, or we have enough, I would say, engineers, technicians, because we do have many added value jobs to fulfill. So for me, it's not a question of offer. The offering or the offers is there. It's a question really of having the right resources to meet all these required jobs, typically from tech industries.
But this is, I mean, what is the climate in ASEAN in terms of the skills opportunities? Because Ahmed, you must as well, you must be recruiting in Indonesia, in every country Microsoft operates in.
Yeah, that's a great question. We have approximately 35,000 employees across Asia, and our two big centers for software and research development between India and China. But we're equally investing in the skills of the people in the countries we operate in. So it might be a number that might jump out as a big one, but we have educated 21 million Indonesians in the last 3 years through the pandemic. We took a pledge globally of investing in skills because we believe the biggest impediment for progress and societal inclusion that we've spoken about will be skills and infrastructure. And in the skilling program, what we're trying to also connect is skill with jobs. So just in the month of July, we upskilled 950,000 people across the world in AI, of which 20,000 people have had jobs to the point that Patrice just made. The current challenge I think we're seeing as an industry, as somebody who is looking for employees, is the education system hasn't yet evolved to a point of skilling for contemporary needs. And I think that is the biggest change that we have to drive with governments and institutions.
I think it's a really interesting question because it's now a question, I think, in the 21st century of whether the education system can ever keep up with business. And it's long been my view that we need we need to accept there has to be a business and education partnership, because there's no way a traditional school, in my view, can really, the technology that Microsoft uses changes every year, every 2 years, and so on. So it's an extremely difficult circle to square. But I just want to ask as well, Abdulaziz, and also Marissa, the other theme I think that's come out of your remarks is the sort of accumulated experience and knowledge. So I described your floating solar platform as potentially a risky project, but in a sense, this is a real win-win, because you're providing advanced renewable technology in Indonesia, and when it works, as I'm sure it will, you will be able to, as it were, export that model around the world. And similarly, Marissa, every deal that Standard Chartered is doing is adding to the experience of financing these sustainable projects. So let's start with you, Abdulaziz, on that point.
First of all, let me assure you that it will work. Yes. In fact, I was on the site yesterday. It's a 3 hours drive from here, and we are just now starting our commissioning and testing to inaugurate the plant and start the commercial operation hopefully next month. So it will work. And certainly there are a lot of learning from such a project and from all the innovative projects which we have deployed across the globe. We invested in the first floating wind farm in the UK, for example. We invested in the first concentrated solar power projects in the UAE in a very dusty sort of region. We now deploying electrical storage batteries in Uzbekistan to support the grid and minimize the investment the government should do in the infrastructure related to the transmission lines and so on. And all of this is, of course, accumulated learning that, one, support those nations to unlock further opportunities, and also support us as a developer, right, to export such solution to other nations where they're facing a similar challenge. It also supports us into going to the next step. So now, what is next after the a floating, for example, solution for Indonesia? We started discussing cross-country projects where we generate in one country and we export the electricity and have the offtake happening in other country. And we believe that such solutions will solve, it will be a win-win for different nations, but will solve a lot of challenges that today are obstacles towards energy transition at specific countries. So knowledge is wealth, and a lot of companies struggle to quantify this, right? But it is really what keeping us going forward. Knowledge is what also makes people and our clients confident to work with us and give us further opportunities to deliver a new projects.
And Marissa, you're as it were, you're accumulating knowledge as well in terms of how one finances these projects. And to slightly broaden the point, it's important as well to have a strong regulatory environment here in ASEAN as well to make these investments sustainable.
So, touching on a couple of the last comments that were made. First of all, anytime we are financing a new industry or building an asset class, one always starts small, and the first deal is always very hard. You know, you don't know what you're doing because you've never done it before, and you're working your way through it, and you'll hit hurdles, and you knock them down, and you reach the next one, and you reach the next one. But when you get it over the line, then that is enormously valuable information that you replicate. And you not only replicate it, but you do it bigger next time. And to your skills point, the Chirata project is going to create 800 jobs, 800 new energy jobs. Linking that back to your question
about skills, yeah.
On skills, the inverse of that is the number of people that are employed in the coal industry. So as we seek to decommission coal, we are going to need to retrain those people in those jobs of the future. So we are very mindful as we're providing finance, and we talk about the notion of a just transition. The just bit is ensuring that we are creating these sustainable jobs for the future. So that's always at the back of our mind, thinking, how do we take humans and redeploy them just as we're redeploying capital from brown to green? We're doing the same thing on the job side. Final point I would make is to your question on government participation. The Chirata project is an example. We need to work in close partnership with the government. In some cases, we need to change laws because they don't provide for the type of structure that we need or the type of equity participation. In other cases, it might be facilitating a permitting process so that we can get through the system faster. You know, but these are all the things that you work through as you're working on a project. But the beautiful thing about ASEAN collaboration.
Aduh, studio ya? Iya, studio. Ini studio udah. Terus
Yang tadi ada ininya kok.
coba sebentar. Di ini coba. Lu mati tuh, lu malah matiin.
Ini masih nyambung sama di lagi.
Politician, and I haven't really brought politics into this discussion. I'm not going to, but it is important to remember, you know, and it's. The article in the Financial Times today is suffered by in the UK. So those of you who visit the UK regularly and see it raining all the time, actually we have to invest in our infrastructure, and politics does get in the way. There's a vote in our Parliament this week on whether to capital, human capital transition as well. I want to Sunaso whether if Sunaso is able to just comment on how you see, when Marissa talks about changing laws, the climate for starting small businesses in Indonesia, giving people the opportunity, as it were, to pursue their projects in a digital, in the digital environment you're creating?
I think this question is really relevant to what we have done to ensure wider financial access for underserved population, I think.
Yes.
You mean underserved population?
Yes.
It is very, very huge potential.
Exactly.
Yeah. They used to have limited access to financial services, especially from formal financial institutions. In 2019, ultra-micro segment comprised approximately 65 million micro-business units, of which around 14 million ultra-micro business have not had access to funding at all.
Exactly.
Either from formal or informal sources. Some of the factors that contribute to this situation, including unequal service coverage from the formal financial institution outlet, and the role of financial agent that was not yet optimized to provide financial services. Based on our internal research, ultra-micro customers usually familiar with digital platform, using their gadget, but they have limited knowledge of financial product platform, on financial product beyond saving account due to the low financial literacy. So I think the most important thing is how to increasing the level of literation of financial literation. They prefer banking via agent rather than digital banking model and need a financial institution that is locally embedded can gain their trust. That's important. To respond to these challenges, we come up with hybrid bank strategy. So I think we come up with not through suddenly digital, fully digital, because I think everything we can do, I think should be in line with the microfinance journey. So we come up with hybrid bank strategy where combine the strength of our physical presence and digital capabilities.